hobbyists, welcome to my garage. Well, workspace, shop, whatever you want to call it. It's what I've got for now. Anyway, today we're going to be building my first forge. I'm going to walk you step by step how to put it together, and these plans are not mine, just want to put that as a disclaimer. I drew inspiration from a YouTuber known as Essential Craftsman, and it's a fantastic channel and resource. I recommend you take a look at it as well if you're wanting to get into blacksmithing. I found there's a lot of useful information on that channel, and he seems like a pretty awesome guy. I'll put a link in the description to his channel if you want to take a look at that. Anyway, these plans are based off of a budget forge that he's done, and the decision I've come to is that I want to go with a propane forge. Usually people go with coal or propane or charcoal for their first forge. I'm going with propane because it's a little bit cleaner, it burns cleaner, it's a little bit more available in my area. And furthermore, a lot of the parts that I can use to build this forge were just from my local hardware store, so it's a lot easier for me to put this together. We're going to be using fire bricks. Got these at Big Box Hardware Store, I'm not going to name any names. We've got some angle iron here. I've got two 4-foot pieces that I'm going to cut to size. I've got some flat stock bar as well. I've got some all thread. This is 7/16, I believe by 16? Yep, 14. And I've also got obviously the fire bricks. I've got 12 of them. You really only need about 6 for this build. I've just got a couple of extra in case I screw up the hole that goes in the center of one of them. So I've got those. And basically, I don't have a drill press for making the holes. I don't have a chop saw, but what I do have is a hammer. I have a punch set, useful for making the center punches for where you're going to put your holes. I do have a drill. You can do this with a hand drill. And a reciprocating saw with a bimetal blade. You could also use an angle grinder. I also have one of those. I'm going to try the reciprocating saw because it tends to make a quicker work of it. A file. When you do make your cuts, you want to deburr the edges. You can also use a belt sander. I also have one of those, but the file is just going to be quicker and easier because it's right on hand for me. 2 adjustable wrenches, or wrenches for the size of the nuts that you're using for your all-threaded nuts. I got 24 bolts here, or nuts, I'm sorry, and 12 flat washers. And that's pretty much all I need to build this thing. Real simple, these parts were pretty cheap, easy to source, and they were just really easily available to me. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the steel to the sizes I need, and we'll go from there. Okay, so first things first. We're going to take the angle iron, and these are 4-foot sections that I got from the hardware store. They're 1/8 of an inch thick by 2 by 2. And I'll put a parts list in the description at the end. But anyway, you're going to measure these out to where you have one piece that's cut in half. So you're going to have two 24-inch lengths. See, I made my marks right here. I know it's kind of hard to tell because I did it with pencil, but I can see it just fine. And just a word of the wise, I used a tape measure when I did this, but if you have like a nice ruler that goes up to say 12 inches or more, I would use that instead because fooling around with a tape measure on this is not quite as easy as a ruler is. Anyway, I've got that laid out to 24 inches. And then on my other piece, I have 5 9-inch lengths. There's another 9-incher. There's another 9-incher. There we go. And then on the all thread, I have 3 2-foot lengths. I'm going to cut them into 6 12-inch pieces. So we're going to go ahead and start cutting now. One thing I forgot to mention is whenever you're working with metals where you're shaving off pieces or you're drilling into it and you're going to get coils of metal coming off or flakes or you're grinding into metal, it's a really good idea to wear eye protection. And typically I like to wear long sleeves myself, and it just keeps metal bits off of you. From working on cars in the past and other projects and using my lathe, well, it's just a good idea. So I recommend you do that. And away we go. One piece done. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest off camera, but just so you have an idea of how that turns out. Obviously, it's better if you have a chop saw. Maybe even the angle grinder would be better. But not too bad. Alright, so not perfect, but the beauty about this build is it doesn't have to be perfect. There's actually some error room built into it. Since I'm using bolt-in hardware and I'm not welding it together, things don't have to be quite lined up perfect in flesh. Although I'm saying that, even though it's not perfect, I got a pretty good result so far. So here's our 9-inch segments and our two 24-inch segments. Next we're going to do the flat bar, which I've already got on the vise here. And I've done measurements at 11.5 inches. There's an 11.5 inch mark, and I got one here as well. So I'm going to cut that up, and then we'll start drilling some holes. One thing I forgot to mention, if you are going to use a reciprocating saw like I am, it is very helpful if you take your punch set and make a mark or make a punch or a divot or something for the blade to catch into when you first go at it. It keeps the blade from wandering around, and bouncing around and stuff, and it just makes it a lot easier. Alright, the next part is going to be to lay out our pieces like I've done so here. These are after I've done all my cuts. And we're not going to be drilling any holes into 4 of these 9-inch pieces. We will be, however, drilling some holes into one of them. So I've got them laid out here. And this is where you're going to put your holes. Well, first off, I should note that since if you don't have a precise way of cutting like I didn't, I used a reciprocating saw. Like if you have a chop saw, then you can measure it however you want. But I suggest that you center everything and square it from the left side. And the reason I'm saying this is because if you measure from this side, you do some holes, and you measure from the other side of the other piece, these are the legs of the unit. And what's going to happen is your bolts aren't going to line up right. So I would square it from one side and make sure you measure from one side. And if you do that, you shouldn't go wrong. So I got everything squared up. And we're going to go 1 inch. And we're gonna just make some center marks here. So I'm going to do 1 inch. Then I'm going to do 13 inches. Get my pencil lid out here. And if you have chalk, that's probably a lot easier than what I'm doing. I'm using a pencil. But as long as you can see it and you can make your measurements, you're fine. So I got 1 inch, 13, and 23. And I'm taking these measurements from the Essential Craftsman's channel. And basically it's going to end up the same proportions as the furnace he's made, or the forge he's made. Okay, next. Same thing, but we're going to go over the top, and it's going to be on the opposite side, the opposite face. So I did this face right here, and we're going to do the opposite face. And the reason we're doing that is because these are the legs of the unit, and we want them to be in a right-left fashion. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm just going to make a mark for 1 inch, 13, and 23. Alright, got the marks on the main legs. Now we're going to do on our flat bar. And he recommends going 10 and an eighth from center to center. So to go center to center, if we take a look here, we've got 11.5-inch pieces. So if I measure out 10 and an eighth, I'm just going to eyeball it here. That should give me roughly an inch on each side. So we're doing 10 and an eighth, center to center. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run across, just use something as a flat edge. I know I should probably invest in a speed square. And I square from the top, and just run it along. And it's okay to be a little outside of it. But don't go inside of the mark. The reason being is because if you do that, your bricks aren't going to fit. So I'm going to double check and make sure that's 10 and an eighth. And we're good. Yep. Okay, and then lastly, this piece right here, we're going to do, this is a 9-inch piece, and we're just doing an inch from the outside edges. So in order to do that, we'll do an inch, and then 8 inches. So we'll do that. And like I said, I'm measuring all from one side. The reason being is because they're not exactly the size pieces I said they are, because I'd have imprecise cutting. But as long as you square from one side, you shouldn't have any problems. And 8. That'll leave 7 inches in between those two marks. Alright. Then next thing to do is just center punch them. And we'll do that in a second. Alrighty, now we're going to center punch the holes. And if you're ever center punching, I have a tip for you. If you want to make a bigger indentation, so you can find it a little easier, never whack twice while holding the punch in place. It's not a good idea. It's going to wander and it's going to travel. Always take it off, find it again, recenter, and then hit it again. That way you don't end up with bouncing strikes or getting off center. So I'm just finding my center marks, hitting them twice, gives me a nice indentation. The reason we're doing this is it makes it a lot easier for your drill bit to stay in place and not wander around. Let's see, this one I have, oh, got it marked right there. So I've got crosses where I've made my marks. You don't have to hit super hard, just make sure you're accurate. Okay, those are all marked and punched. I'm going to do these ones now. Okay, we've got everything center punched. Now it's for the drilling. So in my setup here, I have a bench vise with soft jaws. The soft jaws are going to allow me to really clamp down and get a lot of pressure on this, so this really isn't going to move. I'm not going to lie to you, if you don't have a vise, it may be a little bit difficult for this part, What you can do though is you can get like a piece of, just like a piece of scrap wood that you have laying around and lay your workpiece on top of that and drill into the workpiece. Or you can use a stump that's in your yard, or you may be able to create some sort of table jig. Whatever you can do to punch the holes in this. So here's my center mark right here. Not absolute centered, but it is centered laterally, which is what's important, so that I'm not shorting myself on the brick. And yeah, we're going to be using a 1/2 inch drill bit. This one's actually rated for an impact driver, which I've got here, so it should hold up pretty well. I recommend that you use some sort of lubrication when you're drilling, especially into steel, because your bit's going to get hot. So I've just got a little bottle of oil here, and it's got a little squeeze tip on the end of it. But you can use whatever you got laying around. Motor oil, you can use cutting oil. Cutting oil would probably be ideal. In my case, this is just a little bit of all-purpose oil. It's just a little general-purpose oil. And then the other thing I've got to say about it is when you are drilling into your steel, try to keep your RPMs lower. That'll keep your bit cooler. And try to maintain a constant pressure. So I'm going to kind of demonstrate here. So we're going to get on our center mark. And like I said earlier, that center mark is to help you from your bit wandering around. Make sure you're nice and centered on there first so you're not traveling around. Give yourself a quick go at it. Start with really low RPMs to make sure that you're not wandering. So you got a nice hole going. As you can see, I've got metal chips coming off. And like I said earlier, it's a good idea to wear safety glasses or some sort of face shield or goggles. And the reason being is because if you get something like this in your eye, it's going to be a bad day. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep drilling at this until I get close to the end of it. So I'm going to cut to that point. Because obviously you don't want to see me drilling at this thing for minutes at a time. I've actually already got one piece done. This is what your holes are going to look like when you're done. And a 1/2 inch drill bit will give you a nice fit with your 7/16 all thread. So that's the reason we're using this. Alright, I'll cut to. Alright, we're getting close to done with the hole I started. Just wanted to show you what it's looking like when you're getting close to breaking through. Put a little oil on this baby. I'm actually starting to get a little low in this little tube. I need to refill it. Alright. You see a little bit of the oil burning off when it gets hot. That's why you want to keep your RPMs down if you can. Getting real close. Some more oil on there. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see a little better. And I'm through. Not so bad. Now you just got to do that on all the holes. And we'll cut to that part. Got it set up in the visor at the moment, just so that I can have free hands, but you don't have to have a visor for this part. If you were to run your fingers along here, they're very sharp edges from when I cut them with the reciprocating saw, and also the holes too for them to drill. And there's pieces of metal that come up, and they might catch on something, so it's a good idea to deburr these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this file. Although this file's not in great shape, it'll do the trick. That's basically all I'm going to do. Just soften the edges up. That already feels a ton better. So I'm going to do that on all the corners. I'm going to do that like right across the holes where I was drilling. And that'll get rid of any metal bits that are scraping on the edges here. And a note about filing too. Typically when you're filing, you want to file in one direction, and that is on the push. And the way to tell whether it's the push or not, this is normally where you would mount a handle on your file. So I actually have one here that has a handle on it. I don't know if you can see that. But basically, you want to make strokes on the push and not on the pull. And the reason for that is on the pull, you're just wasting your energy, because most of the cuts of the file actually face in the direction away from you. You get a lot smoother and cleaner action too. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clean up all these edges and these holes, and then I'll cut back to you guys and we'll go to the next step. Alright, last thing to cut is the awl thread. So I've got the awl thread in the vise here, and like I said, this will be difficult without a vise, but you can make do with other things. You can use some clamps, you could set it on some wood in your yard, if you could somehow pin it down, if you can get someone to hold it for you. If you don't have a reciprocating saw, you could use a hacksaw. Actually, a hacksaw would be ideal for cutting awl thread. But you could also use an angle grinder if you get a thin enough cutout wheel. There's many ways to do it, but I'm going to stick with the reciprocating saw because it's what I've got. And my tip for you when you're doing this with a reciprocating saw, get it right into the notch of where you measure on your 12-inch mark, and just hold it as still as you can while spinning it at low RPMs. Well, not spinning, but you get what I mean. Until you get started. And once you got started, you'll be able to take off. Just like that. Once you got all of that cut out, we're going to go ahead and bolt it all together. So we'll be right back. Alright, all threads all cut and deburred. Now it's time to assemble the main body. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a couple of nuts and washers. The washers we're going to use for the bottom side holes, and the ones for the very top of the piece. So I'm just going to take a couple of washers here and a couple of nuts. So here's our 2 feet. The longer dimension is going to be the way we face to the right, just to make it simple. And I'm going to place a washer and a nut under one side. And this piece, the one with the holes, the 9-inch piece with the holes, on the top. Take our Allen thread through, thread it through, get it through your washer. And I would get it started by hand first. It's maybe a little bit tricky without an extra set of hands, but you can do it. I got that one on there. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to get our nut and our washer. Thread our awl through, thread through. Oops. Get this started by hand. And if you're having trouble threading it on by hand, just go back and deburr it a little bit more and do it more like in a conic shape, and you should be able to get it on there. Okay? Once we got that, we can set our next set of nuts on there. And actually, I should have put a nut on first. That way I don't have to go all the way down like this. So hopefully you watch this before you start it yourself so you don't make the same mistake I just did. It's not a big deal. I just have to keep threading it until I get all the way down there. Just get it on there tight by hand, just so it gives it a little bit of rigidity first. You'll go back and tighten these with the wrenches after you've got it all completely assembled. Okay, we're going to thread the other one on. And like I said, I should have put these on first from the bottom side. Then I wouldn't have to do it all the way from the top like this. So just remember to do that yourself. Not the end of the world. It just takes a couple more seconds than I should have. We all make mistakes. That's on there kind of snug. Just hand tight for now. It's fine. And we're going to do the same thing with these other 4 holes. Alright, now that we got all that all thread on there and ready to go, we're going to take these 9-inch pieces that you cut off. And these are going to be what kind of pinch the bricks together. So just lay your bricks in there. I'm going to do 2 laying flat for the bottom. Square these up. Just like so. I'm going to put 2 on their sides. Just like that. Kind of square those up. And actually, now that I'm looking at this, it would make more sense if you laid... No? That makes sense. Yeah, these on their side. Square those up. And then the top ones, laying across, like so. Pinch your shelves together. And now that I'm looking at this, it might also make sense, since this is kind of a rounded corner on the inside, if you were to try to square that up a little bit, you'd get a little bit of a tighter fit, I think. I don't think it's a huge issue, because really we just need it to pinch down to make a clamping force. But if you wanted it to have a little bit of a tighter fit, I would suggest filing this out just a little bit. I'm not going to bother with that right this second. So we're going to take our angles and put them on this side, running the opposite of the bricks on the top. I noticed that it kind of runs opposite of the bricks on the bottom as well. And this should provide an adequate force for it to pinch it close. And then what we'll do is take a set of nuts, thread these down. We can get it down far enough to just where it's contacting the plates on the top. Alright, we're going to finish assembling the body of the forge. That's the flat bar we had drilled earlier. I've already got one piece on, so what we're going to do is we're going to slide it on here. Take our nuts, sit them on top, and spin them on. Tighten this up with your wrench. Get it nice and snug, but don't over tighten it because you'll break your bricks. That's a little much. And basically, the tension is going to hold those bricks in there, and it's not going anywhere. Alright, I've got some flat washers here on top of some nuts on the very top, and I made this level with the top here. And I actually happen to have a spare piece of aluminum laying around. Drill you some holes the length of the all thread here. And we're going to slide that on. Okay. Mine's kind of a tight fit. I'm going to tighten these up a little bit, make this a little more level. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a nice little shelf where you can place things. It's just nice to have. It's not necessary. You could do without these pieces of all thread here and use bolts instead. Then you can do without this shelf. But I kind of like it, so that's what I'm going to use. And if you did do that, you'll need an extra 4 or 5 bolts. I'll say 4, because I don't have bolts for the top here on the left side. But that's okay for now. I'll just add that later. Alright, now I got a nice little space where I could set things. On the side of the forge is where you're going to have your hole for your burner. And I just have a mock-up right here for where my burner is going to go. Just like that. So drilling into concrete fire brick is extremely difficult, I've come to find out. What I used was a masonry bit that I borrowed in my drill. I punched a couple holes in a circle, and then I just chiseled it out. If you have soft fire brick, you can use a hole saw. You cannot do that with this concrete fire brick that I got at the hardware store, so just a heads up. Alright, now that we've got our fire brick drilled, I went ahead and I installed the burner. The fire brick was actually a lot harder to work with than I thought. I had to use a masonry bit and cut through it first, and then file it out. So that's what I did. So as you can see, I got everything installed now and it's ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and light up the forge for the very first time. So. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to set up some kindling in there just to get it started. I'm going to turn on the gas. And then turn on my valve. forge, where I'm going to go ahead and conclude the video there. I think it was a good, successful first burn. I started to make a pair of tongs using a twist on the end. I know that's not going to hold up structurally to heavy things, but this is going to be a very small pair of tongs. So I got one end kind of roughed out. However, I started to work on the other side with just using an old file, and it snapped off when I went to do the turn in the vise. So that's unfortunate. Well, I guess that's my first failure, huh? Anyway, I got a good start on it. I'll have to get a hold of some more steel so I can go ahead and finish my first pair of tongs, and then we'll rock and roll then. Thanks for tuning in.